You're about to discover something unsettling. Intelligence doesn't protect you from manipulation. Sometimes it makes you easier to trap, because a smart mind can build a perfect argument for a lie, if that lie protects your identity. Have you ever watched a brilliant person defend something obviously false and thought, how can they not see it? The answer isn't low IQ. It's a psychological defense system activating to prevent an internal collapse. Tonight on Deep Mind, we're exposing cognitive dissonance. What happens when reality collides with what you believe, what you posted, what you voted for, or what you've built your whole personality around? Cognitive dissonance is that discomfort when two things are true at the same time, but they can't. Your brain hates contradiction the way your body hates pain. So it reacts fast. And here's the dark secret. The brain doesn't always reduce dissonance by updating beliefs. It often reduces dissonance by updating the story, changing meanings, rewriting motives, or declaring the threat evil. Because for many people, beliefs aren't ideas. Beliefs are passports. They grant belonging, status, and safety inside a tribe. When facts threaten those benefits, facts start feeling like an attack. That's why political conversations escalate so quickly. You're not debating policy. You're challenging someone's self-image, smart, moral, informed, loyal. If they lose the argument, they feel like they lose themselves. In that moment, the mind turns from scientist to bodyguard. It stops asking, what's true? And starts asking, what keeps me safe? That shift is where crazy beliefs survive. One way dissonance gets resolved is simple denial. Not because the person didn't hear the evidence, because accepting it would force them to admit something expensive. I was fooled. Or worse, I helped the wrong side. Another way is justification. You'll hear it as moral math. Yes, it happened, but the other side is worse. Or, yes, it's ugly, but it's necessary. The brain turns contradiction into a strategic choice. Then comes the most seductive move, identity protection. The mind says, if I'm wrong about this, what else am I wrong about? That threat feels like a collapse of the whole mental structure. So instead of changing one belief, the brain builds a fortress around it. And that fortress has walls with names: confirmation bias, motivated reasoning, selective memory, and a carefully curated enemy list. Confirmation bias is the brain's search engine set to comfort mode. You don't just look for information. You look for permission to keep believing what already feels right and socially safe. You click articles that agree with you faster. You trust experts who validate you more. You scrutinize opposing evidence like it's a criminal suspect. Same brain, different standards, depending on who benefits. Motivated reasoning is even darker. It's not the search for truth, it's the search for a verdict you like. The brain becomes a lawyer, collecting favorable evidence and cross-examining anything that threatens your preferred conclusion. This is why smart people can be the hardest to convince. They don't just believe. They explain. They connect dots. They generate context. Intelligence becomes a high-powered engine for rationalization. If you want a real-world example, watch what happens when a public figure gets caught contradicting themselves. Supporters don't necessarily deny the quote. They reinterpret the intention, attack the messenger, and shift the conversation. They'll say, it was sarcasm, or they meant something else, or the clip is out of context. Sometimes context matters. Sometimes it's a shield used to avoid admitting the simplest truth. Now flip the lens. The same pattern happens on every side. That's the point. Cognitive dissonance isn't a political disease. It's a human operating system, and it activates wherever identity is on the line. Social issues trigger it too. Someone sees themselves as compassionate, but supports actions that harm vulnerable people. The dissonance is painful, so the brain changes the frame. They deserve it, or it's not my problem. Notice how quickly empathy gets replaced by explanation. Explanation isn't always evil, but it becomes dangerous when it's used to numb guilt instead of confront reality. And then there's the internet, an environment designed to weaponize dissonance. Once you publicly post an opinion and get 100 likes, changing your mind becomes socially expensive. Now a belief isn't just inside you. It's archived, screenshotted, reposted. Your mind knows that reversing course could trigger embarrassment, ridicule, or rejection. So it protects the old position harder. That's how people become trapped in a digital identity. They defend the past version of themselves like it's a hostage situation, because admitting change feels like admitting weakness. Here's the part most people miss. Dissonance isn't just discomfort. It's a threat signal. Your brain treats it like danger. That's why arguments create adrenaline, anger, and that urge to destroy the other person's credibility. When dissonance spikes, people don't just disagree. They dehumanize. They call the other side brainwashed, evil, stupid, or corrupt. Because if the enemy is immoral, you don't have to listen. Enemy construction is one of the mind's favorite shortcuts. If your opponent is a villain, their evidence becomes propaganda. Their witnesses become liars. Their facts become manipulation. You win without thinking. And once that habit forms, crazy things become easy to believe because belief isn't built on evidence anymore. It's built on loyalty, fear, and the emotional reward of being right. Let's make this personal. Cognitive dissonance isn't just out there in politics. It lives in relationships too. People stay with partners who hurt them because leaving would mean admitting years of misjudgment. If they admit the truth, they have to face the grief, wasted time, broken dreams, ignored red flags. So the mind chooses a softer pain, hope. Hope becomes the story that makes the contradiction tolerable. In careers, it shows up when someone sees themselves as ethical but participates in dishonest systems. The brain reduces dissonance by normalizing. Everyone does it. I had no choice. I'm just following orders. The more you repeat those lines, the more real they feel. Because repetition doesn't just convince other people. It convinces you. Self-deception is often the price of psychological peace. Now here's the crucial question. If smart people can believe crazy things, how do you protect yourself without becoming paranoid or arrogant? Step 1 is brutal honesty. Your brain is not a truth machine. It's a survival machine. It is designed to reduce pain, protect belonging, and maintain a stable identity, even when that stability requires distortion. Step 2 is learning the feeling of dissonance in your body. It often shows up as irritation, contempt, sudden certainty, the urge to interrupt, or the impulse to mock instead of understand. That's your internal alarm. Not proof you're wrong, proof you're threatened. And when you're threatened, your thinking narrows. The mind doesn't explore. It defends. Step 3 is a simple discipline. When you feel that spike, force yourself to steelman the opposing view. Not to surrender, just to prove you can understand without collapsing. A strong mind can describe the opposing argument so well the other person says, "Yes, exactly." That skill doesn't make you weak. It makes you harder to manipulate. Step 4 is separating beliefs from identity. The moment your opinion becomes who you are, you become psychologically hostage to it. You'll defend it even when it's bleeding in front of you. So change the inner language. Instead of, "I am right," say, "My current model says this." Models evolve. Identities fight to the death. Step 5 is asking one question that cuts through almost everything. What would I lose socially if I admitted I was wrong? The more painful the answer, the stronger the dissonance trap. Because many crazy beliefs aren't held for logical reasons. They're held because letting go would cost friends, family, reputation, tribe, or self-respect. And now we reach the final twist, why this matters right now. In a world of constant outrage, cognitive dissonance is profitable. It fuels content, donations, engagement, and tribal loyalty. So you're not just fighting your own brain. You're fighting an ecosystem designed to keep your brain in defense mode, because a calm, curious person is harder to control. That's why the real flex isn't winning arguments. It's staying honest when honesty is uncomfortable. It's updating your beliefs publicly without panic. It's choosing truth over tribe when the tribe demands blindness. And if you want a final dark psychology insight, remember this. The strongest manipulation is the one that makes you feel righteous while you're being controlled. Cognitive dissonance can turn a smart person into a loyal soldier for a bad idea. But awareness breaks the spell. The moment you can name the defense, you can choose differently. This is Deep Mind. If this video made you notice dissonance in yourself, not just others, you're already ahead of most people. Stay aware, stay dangerous, and I'll see you in the next one.